Good evening, I'm Chris Nachkite. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. The physical search of a privately owned landfill just outside of Winnipeg began today, just after the 2-year anniversary of when 2 families received devastating news that their loved ones' remains ended up there. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
Project lead Amna Mackin and Premier Wab Canoe enter the Manitoba legislature moments after returning from the Prairie Green landfill.
We found some items which indicate that we are in the right date range and time.
December 2nd marked the first day of the physical search of the Prairie Green landfill, the province calling this phase 4 of 5. In October, during phase 3, just over 18,000 tons of waste was moved from above the area currently being searched. It was on May 16, 2022, the bodies of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron were believed to have been brought here after having sat in garbage bins for 2 weeks outside these businesses within a couple blocks of the apartment of Jeremy Skibitsky. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years this past summer for killing Harris, Myron, Rebecca Contois, and the unidentified person given the name Buffalo Woman. While the killings were done in May 2022, it wasn't until December 1st of that year when the Harris and Myron families were visited by Winnipeg police. They were told what happened to the 2 women and that a search of the site wasn't feasible, which turned into a year-long political fight to search the landfill.
Yesterday, on exactly the 2-year anniversary of that, we returned to the site with both the Harris and the Myron families, and we stood with them in ceremony. And this morning, I was there with 2 family members as we watched that first blue truck of landfill material come down to the search facility. And it is an intense emotion that you feel.
Mackin says while the trucks transport the material, it's the search teams that separate land from waste using rakes and their hands.
A team of 12 search technicians and their team leader will spread materials out a little bit further and look for any materials of interest.
In total, there are 3 teams of searchers that rotate shift work 6 days a week. The province says the project continues to remain on schedule and on budget.
It's also important to know that within a landfill, because of the compaction, it creates an anaerobic state, so things don't typically decompose. So we are expecting that if we do find remains, there may be a possibility of soft tissue still intact as well.
Words that echo what the families have said all along as they fought to get this search, all while grieving their loved ones in the public eye. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba Métis Federation has signed what is being called a modern-day treaty with Canada. The signing ceremony was held in Winnipeg on Saturday with Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandasangari. Reporter Sarah Bettens has more.
This treaty sets the stone solid. It carves the pathway to ensure and enshrine that our government will be recognized. I am not a group. I am not an organization. I'm not an advocacy group. I am a government. And that's what they need to understand.
It's a moment the Red River Métis have been waiting for. On Saturday, the Manitoba Métis Federation and Canada signed the Red River Métis Self-Government Recognition and Implementation Treaty. It's the first for Canada and the Métis.
The first of its kind Métis Treaty will recognize the Manitoba Métis Federation as the government of the Red River Métis.
It has often been said that we are all treaty people. But what about the Métis? It has often been said that we are all treaty people, and from today on, there can be no doubt that that includes the Red River Métis.
This modern-day treaty will affirm the MMF's right to self-government and lawmaking powers over its citizenship, elections, and other operations.
To achieving a vision that we waited 154 years to get to. That's a long time. But one thing you know for the Métis, we don't give up.
But how did we get here? In 1870, the Manitoba Act brought Manitoba, Canada's 5th province, into Confederation. The Act included provisions for the Métis, including bilingual schools and 1.4 million acres of land. But many of those promises were broken.
It was here at Red River that the provisional government negotiated the Manitoba Act which led Manitoba joining Confederation. But it was also here at Red River, quite literally under our feet, that Canada committed a reign of terror. Canada committed a reign of violence, of intimidation, and that Canada failed to honor the land and the economic terms of the Manitoba Act.
In 2013, the MMF won a land claim against Canada. The Supreme Court ruled that Canada failed to implement Sections 31 and 32 of the Manitoba Act that promised land for the children of Red River Métis.
You heard people speak of our land claim. That took 143 years for us to find justice in this country. Why is it that we had to go to court to fight for it? Because no one wanted to recognize who we are. Nobody wanted to recognize that we're rights-bearing people.
In 2021, an agreement was signed with Canada recognizing the MMF as the existing democratically elected government of the Manitoba Métis. In 2023, 4,000 MMF delegates unanimously supported the treaty. And on Saturday, MMF President David Chartrand and Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandasangari made it official.
I'm 64. I will probably enjoy the treaty for a short time. But it's not about me, it's about the next generation. The treaty will be the foundation where we will build the pillars that will ensure what our people's needs are, whatever they are, will be addressed within that pillar.
Next, the federal government must introduce legislation into Parliament that, if passed, would bring their treaty into effect. Chartrand said the federal Liberals, NDP, Bloc Québécois, and Greens have stated that they'll support the treaty. APTN reached out to Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre's office asking if they are also in support. They did not respond by airtime. It is also unclear how the signing affects the rights of Treaty Indians. If legislated, the first modern Métis treaty would receive constitutional protection. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
1 month after the shooting of Joshua and Garnet Papigatuq by an officer in Salouit, northern Quebec, many are still demanding accountability. As protests have faded in Nunavik, the northern region of Quebec, a recent protest in Montreal has reignited pressure. As Savannah Craig reports, approximately 50 protesters marched in downtown Montreal this past weekend for the Papigatuq brothers.
Justice for Joshua! Justice for twins! Justice for Garnet! Justice for twins!
Some Montrealers are demanding accountability for the shooting of twins Joshua and Garnet Papigatuq in Salouit, Nunavik.
They were like always mentioned together, you know, Joshua and Garnet, Garnet and Joshua. It's not just Joshua and just Garnet, but now it is.
Courtney Papigatuq organized the protest in honor of her cousins. A month ago, a Nunavik police officer allegedly shot the twins in Salouit, which is in northern Quebec. Joshua was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead, while Garnet was medevaced to a hospital in critical condition.
Justice for Garnet! Justice for twins!
Mothers from across Canada who had lost their children during interactions with police came to Montreal to support the Papigatuq family.
They will never be held accountable for anything. And this is where we have a problem at. And that's why the whole community needs to start standing up for us, okay? Like, this is a fight on our hands.
Claudette Biles Clayton's daughters, Regis Korchinski-Paquette, died in a wellness check in Toronto.
No justice! No peace!
Martha Martin is the mother of Chantel Moore and Mike Martin, both members of Kaska First Nation in British Columbia.
I've lost my daughter in 2020, and 5 months after I lost my son.
Chantel was killed during a police wellness check, and Mike died by suicide while in police custody.
How many gatherings do we need to continue coming to?
16 lives have been lost in Nunavik.
This protester says policing in Nunavik needs more cultural training.
There is a huge gap between the policing and the community. I believe that the police services are not culturally informed. They're not trauma informed.
For weeks following the shooting, protests were held across Nunavik.
Justice for Joshua!
Saluit resident Donald Michael Cameron says Nuna Vimutes have mistrust in the investigation being carried out by the Bureau des Enquêtes Indépendants, or BEI.
The BEI came in days later to do their investigation, and they were there for a little over 24 hours, and then they left the community. There was no information given to us other than the BEI is coming to town. If you were a witness, please come forward and talk to the BEI.
The BEI said it would not provide an update on its investigation as it is ongoing.
This is not the first time we've marched. This is not the first time we've demanded peace.
Demands for accountability still continue, with the calls now extending outside of Nunavik.
We ask for justice from the people of Quebec and Canada.
The investigation into the shootings in Saluit is expected to take 6 months. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
A Kaska First Nation in the Yukon is speaking out after a suspected leak was recently discovered at an abandoned mine site on its territory. As Sarah Connors tells us, it's an incident the Kaska are all too familiar with.
The Wolverine mine is located in southeastern Yukon on asserted Kaska territory. The underground mine was abandoned in 2015 by Yukon Zinc Corp after it went bankrupt. The Yukon government is now responsible for the site. Last week, it said contaminants had been detected in discharged water at the site's tailings facility. The government suspects the facility's liner, which is used to store tailings, is leaking.
Well, we're concerned. We're very concerned.
Dylan Loblow is the chief of the Ross River Dinna Council, located 135 kilometers from the mine site. He says his people are worried about the leak and what that could mean for the environment and nearby waterways that supply drinking water.
And when impacts like this hit us, it comes with big concerns on health and safety.
Wolverine is one of at least 4 abandoned mines on Kaska territory. Perhaps the most infamous is the Faro mine, once the largest open-pit lead-zinc mine in the world, now considered one of the most contaminated mine sites in Canada. Loblaw feels these incidents indicate mining in the territory always comes at a price.
How much more mining can our environment, take?
He's hopeful the government can rectify the situation quickly and with minimal environmental damage.
And we look to our counterparts there for a positive outcome and, immediate action.
We reached out to Yukon government for comment, but no one was available. A spokesperson says it's still not yet clear what caused the suspected leak, and the government is taking immediate action to address the issue. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Indigenous women are more likely to face barriers when screening for breast cancer. That story when we come back. Plus, here's a preview on what Tina House is working on.
I'm Tina House. Tomorrow I have a story for you about a grandmother that overcame all the odds to reach her dreams and to finally be called to the bar. That's coming up tomorrow on APTN National News.
Welcome back. A parliamentary committee heard Monday that Indigenous women experience barriers when it comes to accessing early screening for breast cancer. The Status of Women Committee is looking at the effects of women getting tested for breast cancer as young as 40 years old. Studies show early detection increases the likelihood of effectively treating breast cancer. However, these same studies also show Indigenous women are less likely to get early screening than non-Indigenous women. Alethea Kiweosh says ongoing racism in the healthcare system is one reason why Indigenous women don't pursue early screening.
But in Ontario, we have recent incidents of racism happening in hospitals across the province. Some incidents leading to people not surviving. We do know that, we feel that if there were more, was a bigger penalty applied to a racist incident, that those incidents would probably stop.
2 youth centers in Edmonton have been helping people more than ever this year. So much so, the centers are now preparing for a fundraiser next week to help them keep up with the growing demand. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Since 1981, Youth Empowerment and Support Services has helped youth ages 15 to 24 in crisis by offering a wide range of support services with 24/7 intake. Corey Moles is the president and CEO of Yes.
Even if that's a place to stay, warm meal, some clothing, and then we figure out what to do next. We assess them holistically. We have a medical clinic on site. We have mental health experts on site.
And more youth are in need of their services. They have helped 897 youth this year so far, and they are relying on donations to continue the work they do. This upcoming Tuesday, they are holding a fundraiser. It's important that funds are donated, as this can make up 50% of their funding.
Giving Tuesday is an important day of the year for us. We're doing a match program with EPCOR, where they'll match all new and increased donations up to $25,000.
Moles says the Canada Post strike has impacted donations that come by mail. He says Yes will go to each house and pick up donations in person.
So every donation actually counts, no matter how small. We have a lot of people saying, well, I don't know how much to give, or I can't give a lot. But this time of year, it's even more important because it's cold outside and the youth really need our help.
The Bissell Center helps individuals and families. Their programs offer a wide variety of help, from temporary and permanent housing to clothing and food. Chris Sheeman says demand is ever increasing.
Since July 2023, we've seen a 22% increase in demand. This is largely for our essentials, so this is things like diapers, formula, all those essentials you need for raising a happy and healthy family. Even our calls for support have been increasing wildly. Just for an example, last month we had about 182 calls and emails looking for support, and this month it's been well over 260 calls.
Bissell is taking part in Giving Tuesday with a fundraiser. They have helped over 500 families this year.
We're reaching out to the larger Edmonton community, hoping to raise funds from them. We know we can always depend on Edmontonians to support when we make a call.
EPCOR, an Edmonton-owned utility company, is also matching donations up to $25,000 for Bissell Center. Both the fundraisers begin on Tuesday, December 3rd. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A court ruling will require the City of Montreal to provide financial compensation to those who have experienced racial profiling. Indigenous and Black people are at the forefront of police street checks in Montreal, with Indigenous people being 6 times more likely to be stopped than a white person. APTN's Savannah Craig has the story.
So I'm looking at placing a client there as part of his release plan. So that's what I'm working on.
Sonia Gagné is a court worker for the Native Parajudicial Services of Quebec.
Enough with the money. Stop throwing money at everything. It's not the solution.
Gagné is reacting to a court decision where the City of Montreal may have to pay up to $5,000 in compensation to anyone who was arrested and $2,500 to anyone who was pulled over or questioned without cause by the Montreal Police between 2017 and 2019. This case highlights racial profiling by police in Montreal, with Black and Indigenous people at the forefront of street checks. Gagné says street checks can end in escalated interactions between officers and Indigenous people.
We've heard stories of just, they got the 13th ticket of the day, and she gets upset and she crumbles it and she throws it at the police officer. Hits his bulletproof vest and falls to the floor. It's crumbled up ticket. It's a piece of paper. It's on carbon paper even, it's thin. Not making excuses, but the point is they get charged with assault. It's escalating for no reason. There's no dialogue.
Researchers say Indigenous people are 6 times more likely to be stopped by the police than a white person.
And all the results show there is disparities.
And Indigenous women are 11 times more likely to be stopped by police than white women.
Indigenous women are heavily targeted.
One of those researchers is Massimiliano Malone. He was employed by the Montreal Police to do a report on police street checks.
They said to us that we are targeting Indigenous people, but Indigenous people are overrepresented in the homeless people in Montreal. And so when we do intervene, it's not because they're Indigenous, it's because they are homeless.
Malone says the Montreal Police view street checks on homeless people as an important tool to provide assistance to them.
And Wissiskin has a lot of different programs where they do like gatherings with family.
Gagné says the best way to help is to provide treatment centers for those experiencing mental illness, addiction, and offer programs for perpetrators of sexual violence. She calls cultural and intergenerational trauma training of police a band-aid solution.
It can't be always training in an office setting with, coffee and donuts, and it can't always be like that. And they really need to see firsthand where these people are coming from. They need to see the dynamics, how families work, how communities communicate, and how they work.
The City of Montreal will be appealing parts of this case, including the way compensation is calculated for victims of racial profiling. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
Coming up next, we have photo of the day and weather. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Alf Carboni of Winnipeg, Manitoba was recently visiting St. John's, Newfoundland, and could not help but enjoy the clear blue sky and calm waters. He tells us this is one of his favorite places to visit. Thank you for the picture, Alf. For your chance to be our next photo of the day, send us your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east, St. John's 5, Charlottetown 1. Cartwright -6, Inujuak -15. Saguenay 5, Gaspé -1. Peterborough -2, Sault Ste. Marie 0. Timmins -8, Wawa -5. -20 in Churchill, Thompson -13. -5 in Gimli, Dauphin -1. -1 in Yorkton, North Battleford +1. -19 in Uranium City, Buffalo Narrows -17. Sunny and -20 in High Level, Peace River 3. 1 in Medicine Hat, Lethbridge 5. Campbell River 7, Bella Coola 6. Sandspit 9, Prince Rupert 10. -23 in Rock River, Dawson -29. -19 in Yellowknife, Wrigley -23 and partly cloudy. -23 in Pawatuck, Inuvik -26. -21 in Cambridge Bay, Chesterfield -19. -21 in Clyde River and Igloolik -20. And that's your evening newscast for this busy Monday, December 2nd. We're back again tomorrow for your daytime newscast. Make sure to join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech kwana. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Ekse.